Today is a different kind of episode, unlike any I've done on the show before. Today, I'm telling you what I've been secretly working on behind the scenes for months. The honest truth of where it came from, why I built it, and how you can get involved if you want to. Today, I'm introducing you to my new Cravings Reset app. She's called Fyouri. 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 Part dragon, part companion, who helps you find your independence. Get it? That's literally her name. Find your independence. From cravings, one reset at a time. Now, first, I want to take you back to something that happened to me very recently because I think it explains exactly why I built Fyouri better than I could explain it any other way. So, picture this. I was staying with friends, and in their kitchen cupboard, there were these candied walnuts. You probably know the kind. The walnuts with a light sort of caramel coating. Not so much that it obviously dips into junk food territory, but enough that they taste absolutely delicious. And they were labeled organic, but make no mistake, there was absolutely sugar in there in various ways. And you know and I know that there was definitely not a health food. So it'd been a long and stressful day. And around 9 in the evening, I found myself standing in front of that cupboard. And in my head, that little script started playing. They're just nuts. Nuts are healthy fats. They're organic. A few won't hurt. And I want to be really honest with you about what was actually happening in that moment. Because I'd had a lovely dinner. I was full. I was satisfied. If you had offered me, in that moment, another portion of that same delicious, healthy dinner, right then and there, I would have said no thank you. Genuinely. Because I wasn't hungry. And yet, there I was, standing in front of that cupboard, reaching for those candied walnuts I noticed and resisted for several days during my stay. And I just stood there, generally puzzled and questioning my own behavior. Why am I doing this? It's 9 o'clock. I'm not hungry. I'm not starving. This isn't about the food. And I want you to be honest with yourself. Have you had a version of this moment? You're full, you're satisfied, and yet you're still searching for something and not quite understanding why. Because I think almost all of us have. And I'm going to come back to exactly what happened next later in this episode because I think the ending matters more than the beginning in this case. Because I wanted to have you have this moment in my life first because it's the clearest, most honest example I have of exactly the problem that Fyouri, my new Cravings Reset app, exists to solve. Even years into my own transformation, even now, this is still something that I occasionally struggle with. You might as well. Okay, let's go. Now, before we get into it, I want to personally welcome you to my podcast. I'm Vera Brown, weight loss, health, and fitness coach for women 40 and above who want to lose weight and transform their health naturally and sustainably. After struggling with my weight and health for decades in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur, I lost more than 100 pounds in my mid-40s and kept it off. No pills, no injections, no procedures, no extremes, no tracking. In my podcast, I share what worked for me, including actionable strategies. I discuss fitness, nutrition, sleep, stress, and mindset to help you achieve your weight loss and health transformation goals. Join me. Now let's get into it. So, as I said, today is different. I've built something. It's called Fyouri. And at its simplest, it's an app that helps you every single day in the actual moment a craving hits. Not before, not after, in the moment. And I want to spend today walking you through why I built her, what she actually does, and what's made her different from anything else I've tried before. Now, if you've listened to my previous episode on cravings, you know this is something I'm genuinely passionate about. Not as an abstract topic, but as something I've lived personally with for years. And if you've listened to my episode on self compassion over self punishment, you know that mindset shift of going from punishment to compassion matters to me as much as anything practical. So today, we bring both of those threads together. And just one quick thing before I go further, because I want to say this clearly and only once. Today's episode and Fyouri herself are about ordinary, everyday cravings, the kind that almost all of us experience, myself included. This is not designed for and is not a substitute for support around disordered eating or a clinical relationship with food. If what you're carrying around food feels like that second thing, the more serious, heavy thing rather than the first, please reach out to a doctor or a therapist. That's exactly the right step, and I want you to take it. Everything else I'm about to share today is for the rest of us dealing with the very normal, very human experience of a craving. So, for years in my own life and in working with the women in this community, I've noticed the same pattern over and over again. Someone is doing everything right. They're motivated, they're following their plan, they're feeling strong. And then a craving hits. Not a planned treat, not a mindful choice, but a sudden, urgent pull that seems to come from nowhere. And here's what I've noticed, it's never really about the food itself. It's about what happens in that specific moment. Either you white knuckle through it, gritting your teeth, feeling deprived, feeling resentful, or you give in. And actually, that's when the real damage begins. Not from the cookie or the chips or whatever, but from what you say to yourself afterwards. The shame spiral. You know, the I have no self control. Here we go again. That inner voice that is far crueler than any friend would ever talk to you. Because here's what I genuinely believe, cravings are not a moral failing, they are not proof that you lack discipline or willpower. Most of us experience cravings most days, most weeks. It's biology interacting with stress, hormones, sleep, and emotion in an environment that is genuinely designed to trigger exactly this response. But the thing is, even when we know that intellectually, in the moment, it doesn't feel that way, does it? It certainly doesn't for me. It feels personal. It feels like proof we're failing. And here is something I came to believe while building this, and I think it's the actual reason why Fyouri exists. I think when it comes to cravings, most of us are quietly handed a choice between two options, and I would argue both of those options are wrong. The first choice is this: either you struggle in the dark, completely alone, grabbing the bag of cookies from the pantry when nobody's watching, carrying the guilt and shame entirely by yourself, never speaking it out loud to anyone, or you push in the opposite direction. Out into public, into the leaderboard, the streaks, the daily tracking shared with strangers, competing with people you've never met, or competing with your own past self in a way that turns something deeply personal into some sort of performance. And that is the choice that I think a lot of us are handed when it comes to dealing with cravings: alone in the shadows or on display. Those are the two options most of us have been offered. And I believe that neither one is actually support. And I'm going to come back to that because I have two stories that show you exactly what I mean. But first, the second binary choice that I think we're offered, because I think it matters just as much as the first. The second choice, when it comes to dealing with cravings that many of us are offered, is this: either you're handed someone else's research backed protocol, informed by real science, sure, but built with zero room for your own specific history, your preferences, your life. And you follow somebody else's rules instead of building your own standards. Or, in contrast, you're told the opposite. You're told just listen to yourself, trust your intuition, learn to love yourself, and the rest will follow. And here's the problem that I believe there is with that second option, the one that sounds so lovely. The moment you need that calm, intuitive, self loving voice is exactly the moment it's hardest to access because you're tired, you're exhausted, the decision fatigue is real. And being told in that moment when a craving hits to simply tune into your intuition right then is frankly a bit like being told to solve a math problem while somebody's shouting in your ear. It's the right idea, but it's aimed at the wrong moment. So again, you have this dual contrasting choice. You're either handed strict scientific rules with no room for you, or your intuition with no support exactly when you actually need it most. And what I wanted to build with Fury is something that lives in the middle of both of those options. Not alone in shame, but also not on a public leaderboard. Genuinely, privately with you by your side. And not rigid science with no personalizations, but also not vague self love with no structure. Instead, Fury has science backed suggestions in the moment that are still entirely yours to shape and personalize. And here's the thing I want to say clearly, because I think it's actually what makes this different than just nicely worded speeches. Plenty of things out there solve one side of these problems. There's private journals that you can journal in. There are public accountability apps. There are clinical research backed programs. There are lovely, gentle self love affirmations. I've tried most of them, but I couldn't find anything that solved both of those binaries, both of those issues, and both of those contrasts at the same time in the actual moment a craving hits. So, that is what I built with Fury. Now, let me tell you about the alone and the shame side first, because I've lived it. I've watched other people close to me live it too, and you probably have lived it some version or another as well. I want to take you back to my college years. Quite a quite a few years ago now. Um, I went to university in Philadelphia, and there was a friend of a friend, a woman whose apartment we visited a few times, who, like so many of us, was trying to lose a few pounds. For her, the typical sort of freshman weight gain, the 10 extra pounds that so many of us gained during the freshman year, had become more like 50. And frankly, I was right in that camp. So I was exactly right where she was. And she was determined, by this time it was junior year, she was determined to do something about it. And just again, to be completely clear, I'm not telling you this story from some high horse. I gained a lot of weight in my own freshman year. Frankly, going to college and really becoming an adult was really one of the main starts of my struggle with my weight and my health. So I share her story as someone who was right there with her, not above her in any way at all. So, in her apartment, as part of her efforts to lose weight and get healthier, she had put these sticky notes on the various cupboards and the fridge. And on those sticky notes, there were notes like, you don't need that. Look at yourself. She'd even locked a couple of the cupboards where the treats were kept with literally a lock. And I remember visiting her apartment for the first time that she was sharing with a few other classmates. And I was genuinely shocked at first because here was this bright, ambitious, intelligent, amazing woman berating and shaming and punishing herself entirely alone behind a locked cupboard door to deal with something that is completely human, a craving. But here's the real honest part. I wasn't actually that different from her at all. Okay, fine. I didn't put the sticky notes in my own cupboard. I didn't lock anything. But in my mind, my internal dialogue was saying pretty much the exact same things as she was on those sticky notes. It was just unwritten. And I was still struggling with those things entirely alone. Because for decades, I believed that weight loss and dealing with something as ordinary as a craving, those things were fundamentally about punishment. That if I told myself how bad I'd be for having the thing, that the shame of that itself would stop me. And when I gave into those cravings, as you know, we're human, we all do, it just felt like a battleground and true failure. And frankly, even just having the craving before I'd even acted on it at all, that felt like evidence of my own inadequacy. So that is the alone and the shame side of the binary that I'm talking about. And I want you to think about your own version of those sticky notes. Not necessarily written down, most of ours aren't, but what does your inner voice actually say to you in front of that cupboard when a craving hits? I want you to know the exact sentence in your own words because naming it is the first step to changing your relationship with it. Now, let me tell you about the other side of that choice, of that binary that many of us are given when it comes to cravings, the public, tracked performance side. Because before I found a different way, I tried the tracking apps. Of course I did. The points, the allowances, the daily targets, some of them with the streaks and the shared progress and the leaderboards that were built right in. And I want to tell you honestly what that experience was like for me. I just found it stressful and exhausting, and it didn't actually help me in the moments that counted. Because here's the thing that nobody tells you so many of cravings hit in the evening after a long and stressful day. And according to those apps, when that happened to me in those exact moments, actually, I had the points, I had the allowance. I was, by the rules of those apps and programs, completely allowed to have the treat guilt free, even though I knew that wasn't doing my health any favors. And that's the thing. And I refused to be shamed into it or out of it. I was done being told what I wasn't or wasn't allowed to feel about food based on a number I'd logged in that morning or a streak I didn't want to break in an app full of strangers or some leaderboard point system that I was actively trying to get to. But for what? Because here's the thing, what works for a 3 o'clock craving, 3 in the afternoon, is often completely different from what works for a 9 p.m. craving. A generic list of tips or a public streak to maintain isn't the same thing as having something with you privately in the actual moment a craving arrives. And I'm curious if you've ever tried those apps and those programs, as many of us have, as I certainly have you ever had those points? You know, had the allowance, technically, according to the app or the program, had been allowed the thing that you were craving, or technically still had your streak intact, but actually felt the shame anyway. And if you have, there was nothing wrong with you in that moment. The tool that you were using put you on a stage you never asked to be on, or left you locked in a cupboard completely alone by yourself. And frankly, neither one was ever the answer. So I started thinking, what if there's a real tool that lived somewhere in the middle of both of those binaries? Private, but not lonely. Personal, but not rigid. Something a woman could actually use in the moment a craving hits. Not a generic article to read calmly at a desk, not a journal entry she'd forgotten by lunchtime. So, this is why I built Fyouri, spelled Fyouri. Fyouri. Her name means find your independence. And the word that matters most in that sentence is your in Fyouri. This isn't me handing you another set of rules. Instead, it's about building your own toolkit personalized to your actual life. So, here is how it works. When a craving hits, you open the app and spin a wheel. That wheel gives you one of several science backed strategies chosen for that exact moment. And here's the part I think is the actually most powerful and most different from everything else I've tried before. Fyouri doesn't just suggest something and then leave you to it. An early beta tester of my app told me that she loves having Fyouri right there beside her, not just reminding her what she could try when a craving hits, but actually helping her to do it right then. So, what do I mean by that? If a wheel lands on a breathing exercise, there's a genuine animated guide that breathes with you in real time and a timer, not a sentence that says try some deep breathing. If it lands on a short meditation suggestion, there's an actual meditation already loaded in the app, ready to press play, not a suggestion to go and find one. If the strategy is to give it 10 minutes before deciding, there's a built in timer directly in the app that holds that 10 minutes with you. And that is the real power of Fyouri. She's just not telling you what might help, she's accompanying you while you do it. And once you're all set up in the app, and here's another key bit, you can add your own personal go to option to the wheel. Something that you already know works specifically for you. Maybe that's text my sister. Maybe it's walk the dog. Maybe it's go and make a cup of green tea and sit with it for a few minutes. You choose it. And you can even choose the odds of it coming up on that wheel. Whatever you land on, when you feel a craving and you spin the wheel, you try it. And then there's a simple check in. Did the craving pass? If yes, that's a genuine win and you just exercised your own independence. And if not, there's another option to spin again. But if ultimately that craving didn't pass and you ultimately had the treat, that's not framed as failure either because you paused and you made a conscious choice. You enjoy it. There is no wrong outcome, there's no shame. There's just awareness instead of autopilot, choice instead of shame. And I want to explain if you're looking at Fyouri, the mascot, why she's part dragon, part companion, because it was absolutely deliberate. Hear me out. Every dragon in mythology has a treasure that it protects fiercely. For Fyouri, that treasure is you, your calm, your peace of mind, your sense of being enough exactly as you are, even in the messy moments. And here's the thing about dragons when their treasure feels threatened, they breathe fire. I don't think we're so different. When our inner sense of safety, of our calm, feels threatened by stress, by exhaustion, by loneliness, by simply having had a hard day, our cravings ignite fiercely, powerfully. And Fyouri understands that fire because, in a sense, she carries it too. But instead of shaming it, she helps you meet it with science informed compassion so the fire can soften instead of burning everything down. And I'll tell you honestly where some of this thinking actually came from me because it's a bit unexpected. And I think it'll make sense when you see the visuals of Fyouri, the mascot. A friend of mine has a black cat. She is utterly adorable, except when she isn't. She's feisty, fiery, full of life, deeply affectionate, and playful. Except sometimes she just isn't in the mood to play. And then she's fiery in a different way entirely. Same personality the whole time, same cat, but just different moods. And that cat, as it turns out, happens to look remarkably like the dragon from the film How to Train Your Dragon. So I started affectionately calling her Dragon. And somewhere in there, in the middle of all this building up, months and months of work, thinking about her moods, the seed of this whole metaphor was planted. And I think this connects to something I've talked about so many times on this show, my standards over rules philosophy. Because rules create rebellion. They're rigid, external, almost always eventually broken, and that triggers shame. Standards, instead, are something you choose for yourself. They flex with real life. They come from self respect rather than external pressure. And Fyouri is built entirely on that idea. She isn't handing you a rule book, she's helping you access your own standards in the exact moments when a craving hits and they're hardest to reach alone. One of the most clarifying parts for me of building Fyouri the app was getting specific about what I didn't want Fyouri to be. First, no shame ever. Not shame disguised as motivation or disguised as accountability. Even giving in to a craving is simply one of the options on the wheel. And even that phrasing, giving into a craving, we don't use, I use, you made a deliberate, conscious choice. And it's framed exactly as that, never as failure. Second, Fyouri is not competitive. There's no leaderboard. There's not a streak you can break and feel bad about. There's not you against a stranger online or a colleague at work who's also trying to lose 30 pounds. No, this is deeply personal internal work. It was never meant to be a competition with anyone else or even yourself. And third, not one size fits all. Genuinely, all the strategies I've incorporated into Fyouri are science backed. Yes, of course. And they're also built around real, personal, lived experience rather than just focusing on generic protocol. But there is also that personalization that I think is missing from so many other approaches out there. And I'm curious, which one of those three has hurt you most in the past? The shame, the comparison, or being handed a plan that was never actually personalized to your specific life? I'd genuinely love to know. And I'll be honest here, one of the most surprising things that came out of building Fyouri, which is now in beta testing, has been the fun of it. Because I think so many of us approach a health transformation as something grueling and miserable and a short term slog to get through so that we can then finally arrive at some magic destination and go back to normal life. And I understand exactly where that comes from. But the reality is, for a true health transformation that lasts, there is no magic finish line where you arrive and you return to your old ways. The goal is the health, which means that the thing that actually makes change sustainable isn't gritting your teeth until some future date. It's making the process itself genuinely fun, genuinely light, genuinely human. So I wanted Fyouri to feel fun, not to minimize the struggle of a craving moment, but to help keep it light rather than heavy. From how she looks, to the playfulness of the spinning wheel, to the way she celebrates a win with you, that lightness has been one of the things that women in beta testing have responded to most. One of the early beta testers told me something that's really stuck with me. She said that even just the act of spinning the wheel and seeing Fyouri look back at her, warm and a little playful, even that in itself was fun. And it took a moment when a craving hit that had always felt, in her own words, heavy. And it turned that into something that she could actually feel like she could handle. regardless of what it landed on, regardless of the outcome, because it just felt lighter. And that lightness changed everything for her. And hearing her describe it in that way, if I'm honest, changed something for me too, and really let me know that I was on the right track with building Fyouri. So let me finish the story I started with. Picture me standing in front of that cupboard with those candied walnuts that I've resisted for days. I knew they were there. I'd clock them for sure. But tonight, that pull towards them just felt real. And I was full. I was satisfied. I had a great dinner. I wasn't hungry, but I was reaching. Anyway, and here's the difference. The thing that, looking back, is exactly why I built Fyouri. I told myself in that moment, do you know what? Just give it 10 minutes. Just give it 10 minutes. And if after that, I genuinely still wanted those candied walnuts, I would take a few, put them on a plate, sit down properly, and actually enjoy them rather than mindlessly grabbing handfuls straight from the bag, hidden in a cupboard, standing up, half aware of what I was even doing. And you're probably wondering what happened. Well, in the end, that's exactly what I did. I waited the 10 minutes and then I thought, "Do you know what? It would be a treat. I'm happy to savor it. It's a treat." And I had those 5 candied walnuts, not the whole bag. I sat down. I genuinely enjoyed every one of them. And here's the part that I think matters most. And here's why I'm even telling you this. I felt no shame, no sense of having lost a battle, no moral failing. I just made a conscious choice in that moment that didn't derail a single thing about my health goals. And here's the thing, the next time the urge showed up, because hey, the bag of walnuts was still there. The next time it showed up later that same trip, I noticed something had shifted. I thought, nope, I'm okay. I'm good. That food no longer had a hold on me. That moment, that 10 minutes, the plate, the 5 candied walnuts, the quiet realization afterward, that is exactly the kind of in the moment, shame free support I believe so many women need. Whether you have the treat or whether you don't, there's so many options that can help you in that moment. And that is exactly what led me to build Fyouri. So here's where things stand now. Fyouri, the Cravings Reset app, she is live. She's a real app available for you to try today. And right now, she's in private beta testing mode, which means I'm keeping the group intentionally small while I gather honest feedback and make sure everything works exactly the way it should before opening things up more widely. Now, while beta is open, you can get complete access to the full app, including features that will eventually be part of the paid version, like the personalization and your own custom wheel options, completely free. The only thing I ask in return is your honest feedback. What worked? What didn't? What you'd change? That's it. There's no obligation, there's no commitment to anything once beta closes. It works on any smartphone or laptop. It's in the browser right there, no download required. But if you want the more full app like experience, you can download it to your home screen and get that. It's not yet on the Apple App Store or on Google Play, but that is coming in the future. And down the line, when Fyouri gets fully released, there will eventually be a free tier and a premium tier, the way most apps work. But none of that matters now. Right now, it's just free, full access for anyone who wants in and is happy to give me feedback on what they liked and what they didn't. And if anything I've shared today resonates with you, if cravings have ever felt like your own personal nightmare to deal with, whether it's been alone in shame or feeling like you have to be on a pedestal in competition, or working through scientific backed protocols that actually have no personalization for your real life, I would love for you to try Fyouri. All you need to do to get involved is email me directly at vera@fabfit40plus.com, and I will send you instructions on how to access the app and get it set up. It takes about a minute. And to remind you, there's no pressure, there's no obligation. It's just an honest invitation from me to you to be part of something I've put a real piece of myself into. You get free, full access to all the features during beta, and I just ask for your honest feedback. That's all. Easy peasy. And before I let you go, I do want to leave you with the one thing that maybe matters most from everything we've talked about today. And I want you to take it with you. Experiencing a craving is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It never was. What you deserve, what all of us deserve, is real support in the moments that are the hardest to navigate alone. No more rules, no more shame, not another reason to be hard on yourself. And that is what I tried to build with Fyouri. But whether or not you ever try the app itself, I hope you walk away from today treating yourself with a little more compassion the next time the craving hits. You are not failing. You're just having a moment, and moments pass. And thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you want more real, honest guidance on losing weight and transforming your health sustainably in midlife, you're in the right place. Subscribe here and get my strategies, mindset shifts, and the tools that actually work for women 40 and above. No BS, no quick fixes, just real transformation. Don't forget, you deserve to feel good in your body and life. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on every single step of the way. For the obligatory legal disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, nutritionist, therapist, medical professional, or similar. All information shared on this podcast is purely for informational purposes and does not constitute medical advice. It is entirely your personal choice and responsibility as to what information you use. Please consult your own medical professional for any medical advice.